So, welcome everyone once again to the Greener Hub webinar series. My name is Evelyn Zuniga, and I am one of the communications officers for the Greener Hub project. The Greener Hub project officially started in September 2022 as a coordination and support action of the European Commission under the Horizon Europe program, and it currently represents 15 ERANET co-funds and self-sustained initiatives in the field of agri-food and biotechnology. We started with these breakfast clubs last year in October, and we have had series in circularity in agriculture. Then we moved to our second series, which was biotechnology to advance sustainable solutions for bioeconomy. And the last one that we just finished was sustainable food systems. So if you're interested in topics related to any of these series, all our recordings are now available in YouTube. And now and for these 3 months, we are focusing on the topic of precision agriculture technologies for a sustainable future. And here we are going to have talks related to transparency across the value chain of different products, application of artificial intelligence in farming, robotics in farming, among many others. And just a few housekeeping announcements. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A section and the chat section, which I have enabled for everyone. And I am going to do my best to address as many questions as possible with the time that we have now, that is 1 hour. And if at the end of the session you have a question for either of the speaker, you can address the speaker in the question. Now, today, I'm very happy to say that we have two panelists, Professor Dimitrios Paraforos and Dr. Cohen Uitenov. And we are going to open our round of presentation with Professor Paraforos, who is currently the head of department and full professor of agricultural engineering at Geisenheim University in Germany. Uh, Dr. Paraforos' research focuses on automating agricultural machinery utilizing unmanned ground and aerial vehicles and developing decentralized and resilient digital farming systems. With extensive experience in the digitization of agriculture, he has contributed to over 20 European and national research projects aimed at advancing technology transfer in this sector. Currently, he coordinates the EnoTrace project, which is dedicated to implementing and tracing sustainable cultivation practices in viticulture. The title of his talk today is From Vineyard to Bottle, Trace Sustainable Practices in Wine Growing Under Full Transparency, which is part of the EnoTrace project that I mentioned before, and this is part of the ICT Agri-Food ERANET. Professor Paraforos, thank you very much for joining us today in our webinar series. And I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen and the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to present our activities and to present the InnoTrace project. And thanks, of course, for the introduction. So good morning also to the people that are joining the webinar. So I can start sharing my screen. Then should be fine. Yeah, you can hear me and you can see the slides.
Yes, and now it's in presentation mode. Perfect.
Thanks. The InnoTrace project, as Evelyn mentioned in the beginning, is focusing on sustainable practices in wine growing under full transparency. The idea started that we need to start highlighting more the sustainable practices that the growers, and in this case, the wine growers, are conducting to bring this longer along the value chain until the end product, until the consumer. And we see that in many areas, in many sectors in agriculture, trying to define the carbon footprint. So what is the carbon footprint? What we know, the Green Deal is one main aspect of the Green Deal to reduce the CO2 emissions, also from agriculture. And there are many efforts the last years, first of all, to define the carbon footprint, and then to define measures and take different actions in order to reduce the carbon footprint. We see already since some years, many wineries around the world are showing a high interest in being certified, being carbon neutral. Here is just an example in a winery in Italy, in Sicily. that they are one of the first wineries in Europe, and I think the first in Italy that was carbon neutral certified. Such examples we can find many now around the world. And when talking to the wine growers, they need to understand this carbon exchange that is taking place on the fields is becoming much more interesting. So allow me to say some things about the project. The project has seven, sorry to close this, has seven partners from 5 European countries. We are 3 universities, one research institution, but we also have the industry involved in the project because we regard this as also very much important for commercializing the findings that we are finding in the project. But it's also very important to have the growers. So we are happy to have the German Wine Grower Association as partner in our project, and their contribution, their feedback is extremely important. So the main aim is to provide a holistic approach related to sustainable practices. I have to say that we are dealing with grapevine growing. We are not covering in this project the entire value chain. We had to be very much targeted to go more in detail. But the aim is, if we do that and we can convince people that when you apply sustainable practices, you can inform and you can trace this along the value chain to promote the broad implementation. Here on the right-hand side, we see the architecture of the InnoTrace project. Let us stay a little bit here to understand the concept that we are having. Let us start with the bottom part, where we are calling it the IoT network, or the Internet of Things network, or the data sensor network. So we have from one side the field data, everything related to the canopy growth, to the soil, and so on. And then we have the machine use. We should not be forgetting that we have tractors, implements that we are operating on the vineyard in order to take some actions. And they are also interacting with the environment. So we are also collecting a lot of data. Now we are with the tools that we are having to collect a lot of data related to the operations that are taking place on the vineyard. So when we have this information, the aim is to trace this. Hopefully, as we said, that we are applying more sustainable practices. This is the aim here. We can trace this along the value chain through grapevine processing, through transportation, through retail, until we reach the consumer. So we are able to deliver this information to the consumers. So if we move a little bit up, we go now to the data cloud, to the cloud-based system, where all data are being collected. We have here the algorithms that our partners are developing, all these kind of agronomic algorithms, grapevine modeling, but also environmental modeling, but machine data analytics that are originating from the machine use. This is the back end of our software-based system. And then the front end, so the interface to the users, include data exchange, which is extremely important, as also the wine growers noticed many times. Prescription maps, we need to understand that precision agriculture is something relatively new for viticulture. So precision viticulture, we can say that it's now catching up maybe with a delay of 10 to 15 years compared to arable farming or normal agriculture because of the scale. You can imagine the differences. But now we are in the position to develop also prescription maps related to crop protection, related to fertilizer, and so on. Sustainability monitoring can be extracted also from the data that we are collecting, and then a digital product passport, as we want to call it. In our case, is a digital wine growing passport that delivers this valuable information to all uh, stakeholders. Who are they? We are starting with the growers, cooperatives, contractors, all the way along to grower association, different authorities, and at the end, the consumer. So we also have this multi-actor accessibility, and along the value chain traceability of sustainable practices. One thing that we have acknowledged already is the issues related to interoperability. We should not be forgetting this aspect. So the first thing that we did in the project is to have a co-creation workshop with the growers. Here you see the workshop that we had with the Wine Grower Association. We are starting from the vineyard. We are starting from, we always say we are problem-oriented or agriculture-oriented. We are starting from that point. We understand the problems. We are moving to the technical solutions to find the tools that we need to apply. And then we are going back to the vineyard to implement these technical solutions that we have all together co-design. The feedback from them is extremely important to understand their needs. What do they want to understand from their own vineyard to have a better insight about some information about environmental aspects and so on, and how can we deliver this information further. So all kinds of sensors. You remember the IoT layer, like the weather monitoring. We have installed um, weather stations that are collecting data related to temperature or humidity, soil moisture, and so on. Then we have an environmental modeling and eddy covariance station, gas exchange measuring device to measure the gas fluxes that are taking place in the vineyard. So to understand how the vineyard is interacting with the atmosphere. Based on this, what we want to do, we are using the technology also to create a 3D reconstruction of the vineyard, of the canopy mainly, but also the greening that is there. Then we want to correlate the 3D reconstruction that we are creating. You can see here through drones with a 3D LiDAR here or soil uh, tractor mounted sensors. We want to correlate the canopy with the gas exchange that we are detecting from the sensors in order to be able to say from the 3D reconstruction, you can call it a digital twin if you may, that from this area, this leaf area, we have this exchange of carbon. Then all these are used as inputs to the model that being developed by our partner in Italy. Like we said, weather, soil, plants and leaves, and the biomass development from this three-dimensional reconstruction that I talked about, to have as model outputs like the leaf area index, biomass, yield, evapotranspiration, carbon assimilation, respiration. And then with the use of the machines, that we are collecting the data from the machines. So through the cultivation practices, we're treating the canopy, we're treating the soil. There are many cases that we irrigate. These are influencing the model outputs, and together with our partners, together with the growers, to define some sustainability indicators that would be beneficial, that will be important for the consumers to be able to see. So this was the vineyard part. Then we moved to the machine part. So our partner Exatrek, they have some years ago, it's a university spin-off. In fact, they developed a hardware module that you can connect to your tractor, to the electronics of your tractor, and you can collect data from the canvas related, for example, to fuel consumption. That is extremely important in our case. So these are being delivered to a cloud-based system, so we can record, first of all, fuel consumption, but then we can also record the inputs. So another example is the crop protection, like when during spraying. And here in the InnoTrace project, we will use a prototype sprayer that we have developed in another project, a Horizon project, the Ropes for Crops project. And we are, based on this 3D reconstruction, we are developing now a prescription map for the vineyard. So on the right-hand side, you see here that the tractor is moving. We have predefined the doses left and right based on the canopy volume here. And then the aim is to save pesticides with this technology. This is the idea of the InnoTrace project. When a grower invests money and effort to use such technology and to save pesticides, to become more sustainable, how can this wine grower trace these practices, trace the sustainable practices along the value chain, and even inform the consumers the people that are buying this bottle of wine, look, I have saved this amount of pesticides or this amount of fertilizer through my technology. So we are somehow 1 year after the beginning of the project, and this is the first mock-up that we have created of the InnoTrace platform. At the moment, is a platform that we are collecting all this data from the multi-source. Here you see the route of the tractor in one operation that was just the end of August this year. You see the fuel consumption, and then you see also information like the temperature, humidity, and so on. So this is the research part that we are calling it, and the commercial part, we are collaborating with a winery close to us, close to Frankfurt in Germany, the Kloster Eberbach. It's the biggest winery in Germany with more than 230 hectares of grape production. And then together with them, we are trying now to understand how they are tracing their grapes and how then we can trace the sustainable practices. So this is the architecture from here on the left-hand side, you see all the information related to our vineyard, Riesling, location, Steinberg, and so on, the data that we are collecting, and here is the Exatrack cloud, the machine data, and so on. We are talking about a manual harvest. We have to make some assumptions. This is a proof of concept, so we have to be at the beginning very clear for this use case and then try to generalize it. The first thing that we understood is that the wineries use different types of software, different packages to trace, and one of the problems that they mentioned is interoperability, the connection between this software. So there are reports that are being generated by them trying to trace these grapes. Of course, as I said, outdated software, no interoperability, fragmented data are issues that are facing, and this, as I said, very important to talk to them and work with them, because this is what we are trying to solve as well. With the InnoTrace data platform, we want to collect this information that they are also storing and having different reports, and to be able to deliver this to the consumers. How can this be? It can be in the form of a QR code on a bottle of wine we are examining now. We are trying to make some questionnaires to consumers to see what would they like to see, because we don't want to overload them with information. Possible parameters, plant protection products use, fertilizer use, diesel consumption, carbon dioxide balance in the vineyard in order to save maybe water, to become more efficient in terms of carbon dioxide, carbon sequestration, reduced inputs, and so on. So to finalize the expected results and potential impact, we want to provide new ICT-enabled means to wine growers to improve, first of all, their operational, for them to better understand their winery, their vineyard, as well as environmental performance, while this is important, satisfying consumers' demand for more insight into production and potentially achieving higher revenues. In the long term, because we are discussing also with public authorities, the results could lead to the development of new data-driven incentive systems, reward systems, or more targeted subsidy programs in order to motivate the growers to adopt these sustainable technologies. Yeah, thank you very much.
That's fascinating, Professor Parafros. I really like to see the intersection of agriculture and technology, how it makes sense. I just want to remind people that they can use the Q&A section and the chat section to make your questions. So while people are typing, I have a question. So at the beginning, you mentioned that you did a workshop with the growers, the wine growers. So what kind of feedback, what are the main things that they would like to understand from their crop, from the sustainability point of view?
Yeah, thanks for this question, Evelyn. It was important for them, and we immediately realized that we need to start talking about problems, that we should not start discussing about technologies, that we have new tools now and so on. the first thing that they mentioned, so they had two main problems. In the short term, what is really now is related to crop protection because they have high pressure in reducing the crop protection means. But in the long term is the soil. Soil is degrading extremely fast, especially in steep slope vineyards that are very common in the area that we are here along the Rhine River. So they mentioned soil fertility, erosion issues, and soil humus content. They mentioned they want to understand better these long-term interactions that are taking place that will lead also to increased soil fertility, increased humus content, and this is very much connected to carbon as well, related to the greening that they are applying. So they want to have a better insight about the vineyard.
Okay, yeah, that's I understand. And then, so you also mentioned about that you would like to kind of somehow develop some kind of sustainability indicators. So what are you kind of thinking about? What indicators could this be?
Well, this is now the discussion that we are having with them because we have collected the data, we are seeing different parameters, and then it can be an environmental indicator, not really to make it very much scientific, not to lose the big picture here. We
Hmm.
can call it environmental indicator or financial sustainability indicator for them, or such aspects. What we don't want to overload none of them, consumers or growers. What is the most important that they would like to have as an indicator here? And if we start talking about carbon sequestration, for example, to the consumers, we might lose the meaning what we are trying to give them as a solution here. So you can imagine that this is somehow an abstract term that has a very strong scientific background, but also an importance for the growers.
Hmm.
But you can communicate it to the consumers in a very easy manner.
Yeah, like yeah, like an index or something that you read and you
Something
go
like
like,
that.
I
Yeah.
like this wine because the index is low or high. Yeah, that's
Something like that.
yeah.
Sustainability has these three pillars: societal, environmental, and financial. We are trying somehow to connect to
Yeah.
this and to make a clear connection that will motivate the consumers more, and also the public authorities, the society in general, but
Hmm.
has a strong scientific basis and a strong connection to the vineyard.
Yeah, and talking about the policy makers, so what do you think? How do you think they can contribute to like accelerate the implementation of these kind of initiatives?
Well, we have, because we are collaborating here with the local authorities, and we also have some European projects. First of all, if we show them the potential, it can be that in many cases they are developing technologies for the growers, like open technology. In Germany, for example, we have the system that the growers are getting the RTK correction for free directly on their tractor because there are base stations around all over Germany. And then the state is offering this for free because they understood that this can contribute to the targets that we are having. So if we show the potential, then we can have more targeted subsidizing programs,
Hmm.
but also understand that there are tools when we are talking about reaching the aims of Green Deal, then maybe we need to support the growers in this direction that will contribute to the sustainability of the vineyard agriculture in general.
Hmm. And do you think this could apply for like small wine growers and then big companies, as in, because I feel like there's like a lot of information that is gathered and there has to be like some kind of I don't know, they will have some kind of capability to storage, and then there are some like the big companies have more capability compared to small wine growers. So
Yeah.
how would that be
No,
addressed a little bit? Yeah.
no, this is an important topic. The smallholder farms are the backbone of, for instance, almost 65, 66% of European agriculture. The same applies in Germany. In many cases, the same applies in viticulture. That's why we have the Wine Grower Association to see how we can reach the smallholder farms. What kind of technologies? viticulture is it's a high value crop. It's a very intensive. So the wineries are very intensive in terms of technology and managing even a small winery because they have some of them they are doing everything until the selling the bottles to the retailers. So
Mhm.
through the wine grower associations, we are trying to see what would be possible to offer to smallholder farms. In many cases, some of the technologies, this is an example. In Germany, we have the machinery rings. So association of farmers that they come together, they form a cooperative, let's call it, and maybe this cooperative can buy the machine that can produce this site-specific variable rate uh, pesticide application. And then the members of this association can rent the machine to use it only for a specific application. So this is a form of how you can reach the smallholder farms.
Mhm.
This is what is the main aim. We are trying to keep these smallholder farms because we are experiencing all over the world a structural change in the size, and we see that. Nevertheless, we want to support, especially the steep slope vineyard wine growers. It's an important topic. I haven't mentioned this in this project. We are also working with drone spraying in that area to provide them with tools to continue growing wine
Mhm.
grapes.
Yeah.
So we are doing it together with the association, with the unions and the cooperatives of farmers.
Yeah, it's very important to like have them involved because yeah, they really have like a very important role to play in the whole project. And we have a question here. Here it says how the overall carbon footprint is calculated. You mentioned uh, measuring CO2 from soil with an instrument that you
Well,
said.
these are the assumptions now that we need to make. Yeah,
Hmm.
in the project, we are not dealing that much with the soil. This is a big part. We hope to have another project in the future, and there are many colleagues that are doing here.
Hmm.
We are focusing a lot on the canopy part. So I mentioned the growth of the leaves, the stalks, pruning, and so on. But with the soil, at the moment we are regarding it, we are measuring the total carbon exchange. We are having the canopy part and the soil. I have to admit, it's a very nice question. At the moment, we regard as a black box. This is the rest, what we cannot measure, but we detect. We cannot model, sorry, but we are measuring.
Hmm.
So soil is an extremely important aspect. An example is when you just go for weeding, you just cultivate the soil, you have immediately carbon exchange. We are trying to connect because within the frame of this project, we couldn't really go into soil. This was clear right from the beginning. We
Okay.
are trying to connect with some colleagues here in Geisenheim that they are working on it to take some methodology, some measurements from them. But as I said, at the moment, we are measuring the gas exchanges, we are measuring the canopy, and then we regard the rest comes from the soil. It's an assumption that we have to make, unfortunately, in this
Yeah.
in this project.
Yeah, an approximation, but it's
Yeah,
just it gives like it provides some information in any way. Um,
yeah.
so I think like my last question would be like, do you think that the technology that you're developing in this project might be applicable like to other agricultural sectors beyond the wine growing? I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, no, we are already discussing that, and we are connecting with some projects with related to fruit production, like apples, pears, because there are many similar aspects. Because there you have also the canopy. The technology can be used like the three-dimensional reconstruction. We have done this also in the past. Of course, there are some different issues. We are not talking about wine, but the we could call it the apple growing or pear growing part of it
Mhm.
could be somehow connected, not one to one, but there are some similar aspects that we you can use.
Okay, so it will be just kind of yeah, transferring the technology and then just making modeling again, taking up data, but then you can transfer somehow the technology.
Well,
That's
the sensors, the weather
Yeah.
stations are similar, the tractors are similar, the machine data that we are collecting, the canopy methodology
Mm-hmm.
has some similar aspects. It's not completely the same, but you see the connection a bit
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, well, definitely you won't be starting from the scratch. You would just
Yes.
have something built and then from there like improve the technology.
Well, in fact, some of the methodologies that we are using for reconstructing the canopy, we were using it in the past for reconstructing apple trees.
Ah.
So you see, there is an exchange
Mm-hmm.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Professor Paraforos, thank you very much for giving us your talk for this conversation. It has been
Thanks a lot.
very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thanks a
Uh,
lot. It was my pleasure.
thank you. Now we're going to move to our next panelist, who is Dr. Cohen Uitenov. Okay, Dr. Uitenov, as I mentioned before, he is the CEO of the Belgian Digital Innovation Hub for agri-food. He is a leading expert in digital innovation within the agri-food sector, specializing in data-driven optimization through IoT, cloud solutions, and business model development. His background includes startup analysis, innovation management, and project leadership, with a strong focus on customer-centric approaches. He supports companies in agriculture and food industry with cutting-edge digitization strategies, helping them to innovate and maximize their potential through effective data sharing. The title of his talk today is Transparency and Sustainability in the Potato Processing Chain from Farm to Fork through Innovative Data Sharing, which is part of the SUSPOT project from from the ICT Agri-Food ERANET. Uh, Dr. Uitenov, thank you very much for joining us today. The floor is all yours. I'm just gonna stop
Thank you.
sharing my screen and you can start sharing yours.
Okay, you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, I hear you well. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You see my screen?
Yes, and now it's in presentation mode. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So indeed, I want to talk today about one of the projects which we have been doing around data sharing. And so it focuses on the potato processing chain. Maybe one slide about the company Odyssey, which is digital innovation hub. So we were, I would say, started with the support of the Smart Agri-Hubs European project of a couple of years ago. And the idea here is that we want to make a bridge between the typical IT world, where we are having a lot of experience in, with the typical agricultural world. So we have seen that these are two worlds, sometimes not really connected in a good way. So innovation from one side to another side. So uh, most of the customers we are dealing with are machinery providers and processing companies. So we are not focusing only on the farmer. We are also certainly focusing on the rest of the ecosystem, which is a very important part of the reason why we are talking about data sharing in this presentation. Um, so what do you want? You will probably not remember everything after this call, but what I would like you to remember afterwards is that I often see a lot of projects on the primary sector, so farmer and some innovation at farmer level. It's very good. It's certainly needed, but we should also think more and more about the whole ecosystem on agri-food, and of course for specific crops, for example potatoes, because the whole chain can work much better together than previously. And therefore, we need data sharing. So that's also a very important topic I want you to remember. And I also want to not to be too optimistic. A lot is being done, but a lot still needs to be done also. So it's not a walk in the park, to be honest. Certainly not to go from research to real production use of data sharing technology. So that are my three takeaways, which I want you to remember after this call. So think about the ecosystem. Probably you have seen this already in the past, but this is slides from Harvard Business Review. I just want to mention that smart products or smart machines or smart tractors or smart robots or whatever are only a subset of the things we need. We need to combine all the software and all the machinery together to make sense out of the ecosystem. So don't only think about the farmer, but also about the processing industry, even the distribution, the retail, and of course the customer and the consumer. And that's also becoming more and more important uh, in this whole ecosystem. The things the consumer wants to see. Certainly, for example, on things about sustainability and traceability. This is another more detailed slide on an exercise we did in Belgium on potato sector. So you see, I will not explain the whole slide in detail, but it shows the different actors in the whole chain. So you have the inputs coming from different companies. You have the farmer, you have machine providers, you have software providers, you have agronomists, you have processing companies, you have retail companies, you have the consumer, you have sector organizations, you have all kinds of organizations. And there is always a flow of goods through these partners, a flow of data maybe also, and also a flow of value. And this should be combined in an, I would say, sustainable way, so that everybody gets a win-win out of the collaboration and working together. And not only the win for the bigger companies, but certainly a win for the farmers, but for everybody in the end. So in that way, we can improve the whole chain, and that's the idea behind this data sharing ecosystem. If you talk about data sharing, and I will come back in a bit more detail, a lot of things are happening late the last years. To be honest, maybe some of you know the discussion about data ownership. From who is the data? If you are driving with a harvester on a field, on a potato field, who is owning the yield data, for example, from that machine? It's not. It seems logical, but it's not so logical at the end, because the machinery is often provided by a contractor, because it's too expensive to buy one for the farmer itself. So this adds an extra complexity, because the contractor has, for example, invested in these sensors, and then he is saying, okay, this is my data, I want to sell it or not. So this is a quite complex discussion. That's also why a couple of years ago there was a kind of code of conduct. There's not really a law, but more a kind of code of conduct on data sharing in agriculture. And that is now being, I would say, revised together with the European strategy on data. And I will come back on that more in detail later on. More and more, Europe is thinking about these data spaces, and agriculture is one of them. And a lot of acts, Data Act, Data Governance Act, are all being set up I would say, to get this data sharing going in a correct way. But still, a lot of work has to be done there on data ownership, and that's a big discussion still. That's also why machinery, most of our customers are machinery providers, are working on this data sharing principle, because data for them, for a manufacturer of a machine, is important to be used internally, because this data can be used to optimize their machines, and to have a better machine and so on, and more data about the uses of the machine, a better service. But also they are thinking more and more about sharing this data with other stakeholders. I see here some of the end users, retailer, transport, processing, farms, and so on. So making sense out of the data with data sharing and valorization techniques. One example I want to share. It's an easy example to explain. It's on the top. You see here a machine, a harvester for potatoes, equipped with cameras on top of it, measuring not only the yield but also the caliber. So the meaning the size of the potatoes, the length and the width. You see here some graphs here below, and these data can be very useful for the processing industry afterwards, because when transport arrives at the factory, they want to know how big the potatoes are, because at that time they also want to produce some products, some French fries, for example, um, which needs to have a certain length. So they want to know before before a tractor or drivers arriving with the potatoes, that they know which kind of potatoes are coming in. By sharing this data, all kinds of processes can be optimized between the field and the industry. That's one of the examples I wanted to share. This is part of a previous project. Um, Another thing we did afterwards with this project is about this data sharing and data ownership. So in Belgium, we have a kind of data sharing platform which is called Just Connect. You see it in the middle. So on the left, you have the AVR, which is a machine provider for potatoes. AVR Connect, getting all kinds of yield data. On the right, we have an example of a processing company, Agristo, which produces French fries. And in the middle, you have Just Connect, which is a kind of connection tool with two setup with valves, and the farmer itself himself can open it or close it. So he is in control of the data flow from left to right. So this is one of the examples that is being introduced in data sharing, or I would say in data sharing techniques in agricultural field, and to make sure that the farmer is in control of or at least knows where data is being used from his fields, and that's a very important evolution. And you see these data sharing platforms coming in every country. In Germany, you have agri-router, for example. You in the Netherlands, you have joint data. In France, you have ag data hub, and probably in some of your countries there exist the same platforms. And Just Connect is a data sharing mechanism. So it's a kind of, you can find more information on this link. And it works only in Belgium. And that's one of the things which I will come back on. But what about Europe? We are working in a European landscape with French farmers delivering to Belgian producers, and vice versa, and so on. So we need to have a European solution. Um, and that's another example we did with the first step towards connecting these different data sharing platforms. This was a project, Potato X, where we tried to use data from a Finnish potato farmer. So a farmer in Finland, using a machine from AVR. AVR again, which is the potato machinery. So driving in Finland on the fields of that farmer, collecting data in the Finnish farm management software, Triton, and needed to be able to share data between all of these parties. And this is where all these data sharing platforms come together. They connect to each other. In that way, for example, AVR only needs to connect to one platform, and then we are capable of sharing data with the European world, I would say. And this was the one of the first use cases towards the new agricultural data spaces in Europe. Because at the end, until today, and some of you will know this, a lot of software exists, a lot of machine providers exist with their own platforms. There's a whole kind of small startups and so on. And this is a kind of spaghetti. If you want to share data, also from a farmer point of view, he needs to connect to different platforms, share data in this way and another way. It becomes quite a mess at the end to share data in certainly in Europe. That's why Europe Commission has decided to work more on these data spaces, as you maybe have heard about, to have a much better interoperability, and a common framework where all these data sharing initiatives can be combined. And that's a big step towards this data sharing in Europe. Otherwise, we keep on having spaghetti at the end. Um, and you can find more information on the internet, of course, on this digital strategy of Europe. It's not only about agriculture, but agriculture is one of the domains where Europe wants to have a data space. And a data space, you should see this as a kind of combination of all these data sharing initiatives. It's not one database with all data in it. It's not like that. It's more like a, a way of working together in these data sharing systems. And that's a very important step. And I think this is just for your information. There is a new data space on agricultural data, which will be set up in the coming months. And this is an Yeah, this is the result of this European project here, agriculture data space deployment, and it has been awarded, and it will start next year. So we will see the first things about this agricultural data space in 2025. And this helps, of course, this agricultural data space helps for this new data sharing, to have a standardized protocol of data sharing, to have a more secure and more standardized data exchange. And of course, while sharing the data will become more convenient and more regulated in some way, it will promote all kinds of innovations in this agricultural domain. So certainly keep an eye on this. Um, and to dive in a little bit on Susspot, like Evelyn said, in Susspot we want to use this data space in Europe to share data about sustainability. So more and more consumers are concerned about what they are buying in the retail stores, on where is it coming from, not only, but also what is the footprint, ecological footprint of what we are buying. And so this data on sustainability should go through the whole value chain. And in Spot, which is of course sustainability for potatoes, we are focusing on the potato value chain, because also at the processor sides, they want to have more data. If you talk about sustainability, we talk about scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Customers of the processors itself are asking more and more these data. And the big retail companies like Lidl or Aldi or whatever are asking towards their suppliers to have more insight in what they are buying. So that's very important. Besides this, there's more and more legislation about sustainability reporting, the CSRD reporting, and so on. So this is all newer trends, and we need more data to be able to calculate this in a better way than today. This is just an example of sustainability data of potatoes in Belgium. You see here on the left that scope 3 emissions are one of the biggest. So scope 3 means everything outside the factory. So all kinds of inputs, and potatoes are a very big portion. So potatoes on farm level. So when a processor is buying the potatoes from farmers, the impact it has on these scope 3 emissions is very good. And that is exactly the goal of this project, Suspot, to share this data from the farm level to the processors. Um, this is just some examples of where this CO2 emissions are coming from the different things on the farm level, irrigation, fuel use, fertilization, and so on. So these are all. This is a slide which needs more detail, but it shows the different components of these scope 3 emissions. So we are focusing on these scope 3 emissions in the Suspot project. And of course, to combine this with data sharing, it's we want to avoid again to collect data in an old-fashioned way. So in Belgium we have a tool developed, also linked to this data sharing platform, Just Connect, and this tool is being used to calculate these emissions with all kinds of inputs from the farm, but also inputs from machine data, from other data sources in a digital way. So we want to avoid manual inputs, and that's where this data sharing comes into play. And at the end of this calculations, there is a kind of climate scan and some guidance towards these farmers to say, okay, if you do this or this, you can reduce your footprint by X%. And this is, of course, very important to know then for the processor when they are buying the potatoes which are being harvested. Um, so this was the Belgium example, and in Suspot we want to keep to transform this on the European level. This is a complicated slide, but as I already showed, in different countries, you see the flags below, and there exists some kind of data sharing platform. So we want to connect these data sharing platforms to each other, and we want to connect the different tools to each other, and also connect the processors to all these kinds of tools. So this spaghetti is being more regulated, while in every country the processor connects to his data sharing platform, and then then has access to all kinds of data via this data sharing methodology. So, and this is the base, I would say, or this is an example at least how the European data space for agriculture could look like. It's not one database; it's more like a combining in a standardized way, an automated way, data from different providers. With the right data model and so on. So this is the ultimate goal of Suspot at the end. Um, and this is then also, you remember the photo, the slide with the spaghetti. These data spaces can then also be used by all these different tools, machine providers, but also farm management software to connect in a much better and a much more organized way. And within the manufacturer world in Europe, they call this the Ag-In project, which will then connect with the data spaces in the future. And as you remember, the previous example, which we did with the Finnish farmer, this is another example of the agriculture data space where you see the different farmers in Europe, different machine providers, the different software providers, and the different data sharing initiatives. So when you combine all this together, you have a kind of common European agricultural data space, and that's the idea of that we want to use in Suspot, to use this to share the sustainability data which is needed by different stakeholders. Okay, that was my quick slide deck. So I hope it was a little bit clear. And as I remember, only three things you need to remember: ecosystem, data sharing, and that's it.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing with us. I kept having question and you kept answering the questions on the
Yeah,
slides. Uh, but I just want to ask, oh yeah, I want to remind people that they can also put their questions in the chat or in the Q&A box. So while they're typing away, um, how do you think the data that you gathered in this Suspot project could influence the policy or the market behavior in the European potato industry? Like it's still like it seems very complicated because you need to connect everything. But once like thinking a little bit ahead, how do
yeah.
you
So
think?
the
Yeah.
yeah, the idea is indeed that because of the consumers, probably will also legislation will help it, because we want to put on the products which are being sold in the stores, we want to put more information about origin, but also on sustainability, on the footprint it has. So this legislation will come. Part of the consumers today is already asking this, and of course the retail is following this demand, so they are asking it to the processors, and then it's going back to the farmer. And that's good, because that means that there is some kind of data sharing on digital, on data needed to do that in a correct way. And by doing so, for everybody has some advantages, not only because of the pure data sharing, but also because of the, I would say, the fact that farmers will become more and more used to use these digital tools. So we don't only want to share data from the farmer and to the outside world. We also want to use this same data to optimize his way of working. Maybe reduce some fuel consumption. Maybe we will see 20% of his fuel is being is not needed. Maybe, so this also helps him in a certain way.
Okay. Yes. And so what do you think are the primary challenges like when collecting and trying to integrate this data like
Yeah,
across the value chain, across the potato value chain? Is it seems it's very
it's very complex. Yeah,
challenging.
it's
Yes.
very challenging indeed, indeed, and there are a lot of smaller use cases, and I think that's also one of the things they want to solve in the future in the European Commission. If you look to this European project, they often call about these smaller use cases, and that's also all very nice. But that's not. We need to reach some scalability. And that's the biggest hurdle to be taken. So not only that, but also indeed the data modeling, standardization. So it's good that the European Commission has now this agriculture data space, or supported by Gaia X, maybe also a little bit. Maybe you've heard about Gaia X initiatives and so on. So comes some drive from the European Commission to have this data sharing much easier, and time will help. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's definitely I imagine the commission is also kind of envisioning to try to ensure that there's like a compatibility between the systems in a regional scale so you can have like a whole
Yeah, indeed.
thing.
That's indeed. So by not having one central database, but having local and then interconnected data sharing platforms, then you combine these two worlds together.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, well, I don't have any more questions, and I think we can. I think it was very interesting, and it's like I keep thinking in my head how intricate it is to try to interconnect, because sometimes you think when you go into internet and you go like, ah, it's so easy, I can just connect here and there and everything is like I can use
Yeah.
Microsoft Word here and in any other part of the world. But when it
Hmm.
comes to like gathering data from different countries that they have different legislations, then it gets
Yeah,
way
different
complicated.
stakeholders, different countries, different laws, and so on. Indeed, correct.
Absolutely. Uh, okay, Dr. Uitenov, thank you very much for joining us
Thank you.
today and for giving us the chance to dig a little bit more into your project. And I am just going to close the webinar for today. So we're going to have next in 2 weeks, in September 26th. I'm gonna send the invitation to everyone of you. The next webinar is going to be, we're gonna have Professor Julio Reina from Politecnico de Bari, who will be talking about giving smell sense to agricultural robotics, and Dr. Claudio Carnevale from University of Brescia in Italy, we'll be talking about the project Artificial Intelligence Application for Farming. So I hope to see you everyone all there, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Parafros and Dr. Nuitenov. Thanks. Bye bye.